Perhaps as a child playing in the snow, you may have had the occasion to roll a snowball. And you start off very small, something that fits in the palm of your hands, and then you place it on the snow and begin to roll it. And as it rolls, as it goes further ahead, it picks up the snow it comes in contact with, until suddenly you're pushing a rather large snowball, perhaps the bottom of your snowman, big enough, and it can get to such an extent that you can't actually roll it any further. It gets so big. And I was just thinking of that image today when listening to this gospel. Jesus on the road, he's got his disciples and a large crowd following him. He's picking up people along the way, and that's the way the church has done down through the ages. At the core, at the centre, the one who sets the ball in motion is Jesus himself. But as he moves through the Holy Land and as he gathers the church around him, and then the church, as she moves down through the centuries, she gathers to herself more and more of the people she comes into contact with. In the gospel today, Jesus is passing by. He's on the road with his disciples and the crowds that are following him. And by the end of this miracle of restoring sight to the blind man, one more person joins that crowd of followers following him on the road. But it almost didn't happen. Bartimaeus couldn't see the crowd and he couldn't see Jesus. He was blind. But he undoubtedly heard the commotion. He probably asked one of the crowd what all the noise was about. And he was told that Jesus of Nazareth was passing this way. And Bartimaeus is not going to let this opportunity pass him by. Somehow he must have heard about this miracle worker, Jesus of Nazareth. And he must have come to the conclusion this could be the Christ, the Messiah, because he calls out to him using the title of the Messiah, Son of David, have pity on me. But the strange thing is, the very crowd that alerted him to the fact that Jesus was passing his way, that crowd became the main obstacle to him getting to Jesus. Only for his persistence and his raising of his voice, shouting out to Jesus, only that got him that one-to-one encounter with Jesus. The crowd initially were against him. And I was thinking of this scene earlier, and it struck me that Jesus, as he moves through the Holy Land, he gathers an ever bigger crowd of followers around him. And that is a good image for the church. The church is Christ's gathering of people, moving through the centuries of this world, picking up members as she goes. And that flock of Christ, that holy crowd, are supposed to alert everyone that it passes, that Jesus is in the midst of them. Jesus is passing. And it is to be hoped that those people will be led to Christ through that crowd, and they will have their own life-changing encounter with him. At least that's how it's supposed to be. But as the gospel today shows us, sometimes the holy crowd can become an obstacle rather than a doorway to encountering Jesus. They become a wall rather than a gate. Now, it's clear that Jesus heard Bartimaeus calling. And I'm sure that Jesus could have called him to himself directly. But Jesus chooses to call the blind man to himself through the crowd. He tells the crowd, "Call him to me." And they say to Bartimaeus, "Courage, get up, he's calling you." And for us in the church, there's a lesson here. Surely, certainly, Jesus can directly call to himself any and all souls, but he chooses to do it through the people who are already gathered around him. He chooses to make use of the members of the church to call others into membership with the church. He chooses to use those who are in union with him to call others into union with him. And that's our mission, to be doorways to Jesus. And we do that by causing a holy stir, by being noticed, by making a little noise and a joyful noise to the Lord as we walk with Jesus along the road of our life. The witness of our lives can and should be noticed by others who don't know Jesus very well, or perhaps don't know him at all. Maybe they've only heard something intriguing about him. And then the witness of our lives attract them to Jesus. We lead them to Jesus. The witness of our life shouldn't lead them to us, but to Jesus. But if we're honest, we'll have to admit that even though we try to walk with Jesus and walk like him, there are times when we give poor witness to Christ, or even counter witness to Christ, and we become obstacles in people's way to him rather than doorways. On this Mission Sunday, it might be a good question to ask ourselves, am I a wall or a doorway? A wall tells the person outside of it, what's in here is not really for your eyes. It's not for the like of you. A wall keeps people out. A doorway, on the other hand, is an invitation for them to come in. If the door is closed, it still invites them to knock. And if the door is open, and the great saints, they were always open doorways to Christ. If the door is open, then it invites them to enter in, to take a look around and enjoy what's on the inside. And what's to be found on the inside for every believer should be Christ himself. Pope Francis has reminded us over and over again this past number of years that because we are baptized, we're all meant to be missionary disciples. Meaning we are followers of Jesus, disciples. We take our cue from him. But we are followers of Jesus who want to bring him to others and bring others to him. That's what a missionary does, bringing people to Christ and bringing Christ to people. And each of us can and should do that in our own particular way and circumstances. But the Pope has warned that sometimes people think that they need to be perfect in order to do that. And our gospel today tells us something very different. This crowd were far from perfect, and they weren't very Christ-like when they first interact with this poor blind man. But they got there in the end, and Jesus used them to draw this blind man to himself, where his life would never be the same again. At the heart, at the centre, the point of reference for every missionary disciple is the person of Jesus. Our mission is not to bring people to ourselves. It's to bring people to Jesus. Jesus at the centre. And the challenge is to be a doorway to him and not a high wall around him, which would obscure the view of him for those outside the wall. At the end of every Mass, we hear the dismissal. Quite often it might be, go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life. But in the original Latin, the words are much simpler. Ite missa est, which basically means go. There's your mission. What is your mission? To carry with you all that you have learned and received from Christ. To carry it into your daily life, into the workplace, the school, the supermarket, the home, the family, the marriage, and the messiness that can be part and parcel of all our lives. Carry the message of love and mercy and blessing which Jesus has communicated to you, to be carriers of the light of Christ into our world which, let's face it, needs a little bit more light, indeed a lot more light. There are so many Bartimaeuses that we meet on a daily basis, those who have never seen Christ, never encountered Christ, though perhaps they've heard something intriguing about him. But you know Jesus, and Jesus knows them, and so he wants to reach out to them through you in whatever way that's possible. And it starts with just being humanly good to people. And they will know that we are followers of Christ because of the quality of our interaction with them, with the quality of the love and service that we put into our time with those people. Be a missionary disciple and watch what Jesus will do with you. You don't need to be professional. You don't need to be perfect. But you do need to be willing. And when Jesus sees your willingness to be a missionary disciple, a follower of his who wants to bring others into contact with him and bring him to others, then a whole ocean of possibility opens up before you, that the Lord will use that desire. Even though you're imperfect, that desire to serve him and to be a missionary disciple, the Lord will use that for so much good for souls. the crowd at first weren't very helpful to Bartimaeus, but taking their cue from Jesus, they bring him to Jesus. And then his whole life is changed. And that's what we want. We want the whole world to be changed. We want the whole world to be Christian. May it be so.